And in a couple of years, she had a couple of children. And once things got busier, it was harder for her to keep that 2-day-a-week Sabbath. So she decided that what was important was to observe 1 day a week as a Sabbath, and it really didn't matter if it was Saturday or Sunday. And from then on, she worked on Saturday, and she and our whole family really treated Sunday as a Sabbath. We did not, the essential farm work, but not extra stuff. We would never mow the lawn on Sunday because that was the Sabbath in our family. So that was an important understanding for me, and I realized. You may be thinking, well, what's such a big deal about Saturday or Sunday? But when she was younger, before she went into teaching and met my father, moved down here to this, what they always called the southern end. This was the southern end, and Ephrata was up home, right? When my mom would say, "We're going up home today," I knew we were going up to Ephrata. It was always up home. Before she married, she had a job in I think she said it was a cigar factory. And when she got the job, she told the owner, "I can't work on Saturday." And he said, "Okay, I get it," which was nice. Doesn't happen all the time these days. But that's how important it was to her. She was willing to sort of get fired, I guess, rather than violate what, for her, I think remained until her death, a belief that Saturday was the correct day to observe. But I don't know about that. So that's my mom and dad. I thought I ought to share a couple of photos with Lauren in. I didn't check with him. I didn't get his permission first. Oh, yeah, okay. So that's our family. I'm the one holding the cat in the front. Lauren's probably, I think, 13 in the middle between our parents. That's on the farm. Our farmhouse, Blackburn Road. So that's the house Lauren and I both grew up in. Photo of my dad, who died in 2003, and was very involved in a variety of ways. I think a lot of them I don't know about when in this congregation. I do remember he loved singing in the choir. I can still hear his voice singing in the congregation. Certain songs bring that back to me. And I think he was also treasurer for a while, because I sort of remember, vaguely remember that. But that's my dad. This isn't an especially flattering picture of my mom, but it's in, I guess, the kitchen. And I think that's Millie Kreider behind her. And I don't know why my mom is drying dishes and has her purse, is holding her purse. I don't know, maybe she was posing. I don't know, I just found this in her photos. Yeah, can't ask her about it now. She also, I think this will be the next slide. You notice her outfit. She liked red, and she liked sweater vests. Different top and different sweater vest, but still the red in the sweater vest. And I put this in, this is Up Home, this is Ephrata, and this was on a celebration of Jeff Bach's publication about the Ephrata cloister. And I included it because it's another photo of my mom, but also Jeff Bach, who's a good friend of mine. Don Dernbaugh on the left, who was a teacher at Bethany. I'm going to talk about Bethany in a bit. And Hedda, his wife, who tried to teach me German. Not terribly successfully, and it wasn't Hedda's fault, it was all my fault. Okay, and this one I thought I should throw in another photo of Lauren. That is me in the short hair, holding our older son, Zach, who goes by Ted now and is 31, and then Lauren, and that's on the farm. And then that's my mom holding our younger son, Matthew, who is now 30. And then I thought I ought to put at least one picture of my husband in here. That's Ted and me on our 40th wedding anniversary. We went a year late because he had back surgery, but we went to England, and that's at Stonehenge. Some nice person took our photo there, so that's us in the bottom. I think that's all the photos. Yeah. So I said I structured this really around questions, and they're more or less chronological. I was thinking through sort of how I changed, what were my questions at various points in my life. So here's a question: what is my place in the world? And I think this was a question for me in grade school and junior high, because I lived on a farm. We did not take vacations as a farm family. I know some farm families were able to take vacations. My husband's family went to the shore for a week. We never did that. We visited relatives, but we really didn't travel. So when people came back to this congregation to talk about their experiences elsewhere, I listened. So I listened to stories about BVSers who came back, and I think it was Bob Crater who came back from Italy, and I remember being really interested in the fact that he talked about how he had to make a decision about whether to accept a glass of, this is Temperance Sunday, but I'm going to say this anyway. Sorry. He was in an Italian family, and the family offered him a glass of wine, and he thought, should I accept this as a hospitality? He didn't drink, but he decided that it would not be hospitable to turn it down. And I think I was junior high or high school. That really, I remember that so strongly, because I remember thinking, yes, sometimes you have to decide, are you going to accept hospitality that is offered to you, even if the offering is something that goes against your own principles? I was a very strict vegetarian for a while in my 20s, and I went through that in going to dinner with various families and having them put a piece of steak in front of me, or so I learned from that experience from Bob, and I also learned about how things out in the world aren't exactly the way they are in Mechanic Grove, right? And that was really interesting to me. I have to mention my Uncle Walter, and I couldn't find a picture of him, and I looked online. So much you can get online these days, but I couldn't find anything online. My Uncle Walter this was my dad's older brother, was a minister, Church of the Brethren minister, mostly in the Midwest. And in 1958, he decided he wanted to go as a seagoing cowboy with the Heifer Project. See people nodding, so you know what seagoing cowboys are. If you don't, ask around. There are people who can tell you about the seagoing cowboys. And so they were living in Minnesota at the time, and he came in to our farm, and I was in first grade. We took Uncle Walter up to New York City so that he could get on the boat, on the cattle boat, to accompany these cattle and tend them on the way across the Atlantic. Are there seagoing cowboys in this congregation? Anybody here? Okay, so there are in the congregation, but they're not here this morning. That's fine. Okay. Oh, all right. Okay, thank you. Well, and I guess most of the seagoing cowboys are no longer with us, but so that was big. So my first time, probably in a city, New York City. We visited the United Nations. We went to the Statue of Liberty. We did sort of some of the touristy things, and we also got on the boat that he was going to cross the Atlantic in. And that was really powerful to me too, in thinking about, again, like, how does our faith motivate us to do things that are needed in the world? They often, my Uncle Walter and his family often visited us in the summer for a week, and he would always come and have stories. That this was in the 60s, so about the civil rights movement, and I just got a bigger view of the world and a bigger view of the church from my Uncle Walter. Okay, next question. Is the Bible true? This has been something I've really devoted my life to, is the study of the Bible. And some of you know my mother was a Bible teacher here in the adult classes, I think well into her 80s. So I guess it's in our genes maybe. But in junior high and high school, I had a lot of questions. So I started to experience this tension between what I was reading in the Bible, what I was hearing on Sunday morning, and what I was learning in especially my science classes, and just things that didn't make sense to me. So I remember saying something in a Sunday school class that the teacher thought I shouldn't have said or asked, and said, "I'm going to have to talk to your mother about this. This is not a question you should be asking." And that has been, sometimes we learn from our negative experiences, right? So that has stayed with me my whole life, so that when I taught at Elizabethtown, whatever teaching situation I'm in Bible studies that I lead, I always strive to be open to questions. I would never say, "That's a stupid question." Sometimes students at the college would say, "This might be a stupid question." No, if you have that question, ask me, right? It's an important question to you, so ask. So that experience when I was in junior high and high school stuck with me in a positive way, because it made me into a teacher, I think, that was open to hearing real questions that people had, either in Bible study or in Sunday school class, or at the college in class. And I think it created a situation that was more open for people to feel free to talk and free to express themselves. I was in a Sunday school class that I was leading. I'm jumping ahead a little bit here for this story. In California, I went and did my doctoral work at Claremont, and attended the Laverne Church of the Brethren, taught a Sunday school class there, and Ted, my husband, is a little more straightforward when he says things, and would sometimes say things that I cringe. And he said something in our Sunday school class once, and I had that little cringe, like, "Oh, I can't believe you just said that." But afterwards, there was a woman who came up to him. She was probably, I don't know, 60s, 70s maybe. Thinking back, maybe she was 50s, because I was young then. She looked older to me, I don't know. But an older woman in the class, she came up to Ted and she said, "I have thought that all my life, and I'm so glad to hear someone say that." So I took from that, again, it's important to say things that will maybe shock some people, but with other people, it will make them feel comfortable to say, "Oh, hey, I can say this in this group." And I've tried to create, especially in Bible studies, sort of safe spaces for the people in the group to feel comfortable really speaking what's on their minds, rather than feeling like this is something I can't say or I can't ask because this is a Bible study or because I'm in church or something like that. well, yeah, I'll talk about where is the church? This is really a question about, is the church the building or is the church the people? And can we worship in spaces other than this space, right? And that was probably a question. I don't know that I formulated it that way when I was high school age, but it's what I was thinking. I know it was what I was thinking. Those were the years I went to Camp Swatara every summer, and then I worked in the kitchen for 3 years at Camp Swatara, and I loved worshiping outdoors. That was just really, I said earlier, I connected with Murray Wagner and his emphasis on God's creation. I loved worshiping outdoors, and I loved the sense, especially when I was there for 3 summers as a cook, of feeling that I was part of a community. I was working with other people who were going through some of the same questions that I was, late teens, it felt like, it felt very much like a family. So that was really important to me. And I would now say very clearly that the church is not the building, it's the people. That was something that I think I experienced as a teenager at Camp Swatara. We also learn from bad experiences or things that don't go well, failures. Let me just say it, failures. So I was also struggling late teens with, how do I serve God? And I had this sense that I should do something useful and helpful. I'd always thought I was going to be a teacher. My mother was a public school teacher, and ever since I was a little kid, I thought I was going to go into teaching. But somehow I felt I had this stage where I thought, no, I should really do something more useful than that. And so I took a year off. After my first year in college, I took a year off and I worked at a state hospital as an aide. And I learned that was not my calling. And other people I worked with said, this is not your calling. Please go back to school. So that sent me back to college and to finish college. And I think I came to understand, I think what I learned from that was teaching is a calling as well, and that I have thought of it in that way. It's not just imparting knowledge, but I think about the students in my classrooms at the college, or I think about the people in a Bible study or a Sunday school class, and try to connect with them, and that's a ministry as well, and that I didn't have to become a social worker or a nurse, or there's a long list of things I did not have the talents for, or honestly the interest in doing, as much as I had interest in learning and teaching then. So, next question, what does it mean to be brethren? So I was thinking at the end of my college, once I got interested in college and studying religion, I sort of skipped over that, but I took courses in Bible, and all those questions, remember, that I had that my Sunday school teachers either didn't want to answer or didn't think I should ask, they were getting answered in these classes, which took a historical approach, and it just made sense to me. And that's how I've taught. It's how I learned and how it first made sense to me. And I sometimes think I might have drifted away from the church otherwise, but I said earlier, the church was such a center for our family, a social center, that I really wanted to find the meaning in church, and I wanted to understand religion, and I wanted to understand the Bible. because that was so central to my childhood and my growing up years and my family. So I had decided I wanted to go into teaching, and that meant getting a doctorate if you want to teach at the college or university level. And I wasn't ready for a graduate program or a doctoral program, but I thought maybe a master's at a seminary. And this was at Elizabethtown, and Jerry Greiner was the chaplain at Elizabethtown when I was there. And I knew Jerry from when he was the director at Camp Swatara. And Jerry said to me, we're going to take a road trip, and we're going to go out to Bethany, which at that time was out in the western suburbs of Chicago. It was even farther than it is now. So there was one other student who went along, and we drove out and visited, and I wasn't sure about seminary because I thought, I'm not planning to go into pastoral ministry, and there'll be all these really serious people in seminary, going into pastoral ministry, and will I fit? And I was worried about fitting, and then I found, there was a wide variety of people, some who were there because they were searching, some who were at seminary because there were many who were there because they wanted to go into pastoral ministry, but there were also people there who were thinking about some form of ministry, but they didn't know what. So I actually fit in pretty well at Bethany. I had terrific teachers, Don Dernbaugh in history, Dale Brown in theology, Grady Snyder in New Testament, Bob Neff, Old Testament. I have a show and tell. I'm going to hold that up in a minute. It just gave me a bigger picture. Gave me a bigger picture of the Church of the Brethren, that there was more diversity. I grew up in this congregation. I didn't know a lot else. So I saw there was more diversity in the Church of the Brethren than I had imagined. People do things differently out there in the Midwest than they do here in Atlantic Northeast. I also learned the history, so I could see how the church changed over time, and that the church as it is now is not exactly the same as it was when it was started. And I started looking for these threads of continuity. So what makes the Church of the Brethren the Church of the Brethren? What is, I noticed in the bulletin, the mission statement says the unique, sort of the unique Church of the Brethren. What is distinctive about this? That's what I was looking for, and I think I found pretty well at seminary from my teachers. But I also learned that the church changes over time. And it's not always easy to know how it should change. And there are often there's a lot of conflict around that change. There's conflict around change anywhere. I don't know if it's more in churches or less, but anytime there's change, there's conflict. So I learned that. I also took a course with David Augsburger on conflict. We called it conflict resolution, and I learned that I am conflict averse, as are many Anabaptists, brethren, and that's something I've had to work at over the years, and I'm still pretty conflict averse, but I understand, right? I understand in my head that conflict can be good, and that conflict can be used to bring something new forward. So now the whole field of study, it's not conflict resolution anymore, but conflict transformation. So the question is, how do you take a conflict situation and transform it into something new and different and better, and something that all parties can live with? So that was also part of sort of the practical aspect of my studies at Bethany, which I have to say, we talked at Elizabethtown a lot about transformative education and how we wanted to offer students who came to Elizabethtown transformative education. My transformative education was at Bethany. It really, I'm a different person because of that. So I can't, in so many ways. I'm going to say a little bit about, this is my part about my accomplishments. And it's also, I'm trying to wrap into this sort of challenge. We were asked to talk a little bit about challenge. So for about 10 years, I served as a volunteer on a denominational committee that produced a program and a curriculum called People of the Covenant. Have you all used that here, the People of Covenant? See some, yeah. So it started as a program that came out of our pietist backgrounds that understood that Bible study should occur in small groups, and that you shouldn't have an authority. You should be talking about Scripture in the group, listening to each other, and listening to different views. And you don't need sort of the pastor there, or you don't need an authority figure to tell the group what it means. So that was sort of the pietist background for the People of Covenant program. It was to provide curriculums so that groups could function on their own with 8-10 people around Scripture, and with none of them having to be the authority. And that has continued with the curriculum being available. I've been with a Bible study group at Elizabethtown Church of the Brethren for, I think, I should have counted up the years. I think it's 20-some years. And that group has let me know that they want me to bring in sort of the authority. So I will start off a session of maybe 15-20 minutes where I kind of talk about the text that we're looking at, talk about the history, sort of identify what some of the issues are. I might say, people understand this 2 different ways. What do you think? I like to ask questions. So what do you all think? So I will start off with that kind of the authority speaking, but I try to, and I think it's been successful. They feel very comfortable expressing in this group, expressing their views, and without, looking to see, like, what does the teacher think, And I learn from students in the classroom, and I learn from people in Sunday school class, so that's really important to me. I've also worked as a volunteer on an interdenominational editorial committee that produces the Believer's Church Bible Commentary series that's published by Herald Press. There are 6 members of, it's all Mennonite brethren, Brethren in Christ. There's 6 of us, plus 2 editors, plus a chair, plus somebody from Herald Press. And I've been on that team for over 10 years, where we review manuscripts that then get published for the Believer's Church Bible Commentary series. Some of those volumes are pretty hefty. They'd probably be volumes that Pastor Kettering would read, but a lot of you would say that's too much information for me, or that's more than I need to know. But the idea of the series was to publish a series that could be used within these denominations that reflects our own religious heritage as Anabaptists, and I always throw in the radical pietists from the Brethren side, and also the pietists from the Brethren in Christ side. All the other commentary series that exist out there are either written from a different denominational perspective. So there are Catholic series, there are Methodist, Presbyterian, all sorts of series. This is the only one that reflects our Anabaptist heritage, and that's why it's important. Because what I did learn from seminary and then going into my doctoral work was that Christians read the Bible differently. And so we, brethren, read it through a certain lens. The Mennonites read it through a certain lens. And the series sort of also takes that approach with the commentaries that are published. So my challenge there is just, if you aren't using curriculum materials that are published by Brethren Press or by Herald Press, Menno Media, I would just encourage you to take a serious look at those materials, because it reinforces our identity as brethren when we use those materials. And it doesn't mean you can't use other materials. And I read a lot of stuff from a lot of different perspectives. I don't just read, the Anabaptist take on things. I try to get as broad as perspective as I can. But I'm aware that for people in the pews, people in congregations, that's harder to see how the difference. And that's why I think it's really good to use Brethren Press or Herald Press, both really good publishers. There are other publishers out there as well. Let's see. One more thing, this is a sort of something I've done plus and challenge, encouragement, then I'll close. So I've just finished the second of two 5-year terms as a trustee of Bethany Seminary. So I said that was a transformative experience for me as a student, and I have loved being, maybe not always, but trustee work is hard sometimes, but it's been a really good experience to be a trustee. I feel really good about the seminary. I would encourage, again, there are lots of excellent seminaries. We have a Lutheran student from Elizabethtown that I was working with this year who is going to Princeton Seminary. She's going to do great stuff. Lots of good seminaries out there. But I would just want to hold up Bethany as a seminary that reflects the Brethren tradition, and one that I think offers transformative experiences to students. So if you have anybody who is thinking about ministry, at least have them look at Bethany, visit, consider it seriously. But you also can do things like invite Jeff Carter, the president, to come and preach. He would do that. He's an excellent speaker, excellent preacher, one of the faculty. At Elizabethtown, not too long ago, we had Dan Ulrich, the New Testament professor, zoomed in for an adult Zoom New Testament class. So they're also with Zoom these days, although you probably are all tired of Zoom. You can still have, it's easier actually to get the faculty or at Bethany, for example, to come in and teach one class or speak. You can invite Jeff back as a speaker sometime. Young Center presentations at the college. Take a look at those programs. Here's my show and tell. If you don't know this book, this is Dale Brown's book, Another Way of Believing, a Brethren Theology, which I think is very accessible to everybody, well, maybe not everybody, but it's very accessible. It's a Brethren Press publication, and it says, for brethren, New Testament emphases lead to a theology that is more relational than propositional. So again, Dale's book is helping brethren think about what is distinctive about being brethren. How do we do theology differently? And one of the ways is we think of it as a more relational, person to person to God, than we do thinking about it as a list of statements, propositions that everybody has to accept and say, yes, I believe that, don't believe that. So recommend that. I think I'm going to I had a couple more things I could have talked about, but I think I've said the really important things. My last point, okay, I'm gonna get this in. I'm going to skip that one. How do I remain hopeful about the future? And that's really where I am right now. I sometimes feel very discouraged by, getting up and looking at the news and trying to go to bed and sleep. So I think the way in which what helps me is to think in terms of small things. I can't do anything. There's so much I would like to change and I can't. I'm not in a position to change it. What can I do at my level? How can I relate to my family, to my friends, to my church family in a way that reflects my understanding of what it means to follow Jesus? We live in a world where diversity is not always appreciated and where conflict leads to violence. And I think it's our task as brethren to think about how we can live in a way that follows Jesus rather than following a culture that is turning increasingly combative. That's where I'm going to stop. I didn't quite leave 10 minutes, but there are a few minutes for questions or thoughts.
Any questions or comments for Chris? Here's one of our homegrown people who came from this church and is, like I say, a leading biblical scholar. So what you learn in Sunday school is important, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. You're probably all ready to get home for lunch, but...
Oh, we still have 5 minutes yet.
Okay.
Earl, you have a question?
Chrissy, your mother left an impression on me as a 10th grade geometry teacher, and I admired her teaching. Even then, there was one thing about her, though, that I wish later in life I could ask her, what do you think my place in life is? And the basis of that was when I would come in to geometry class, and Miss Booker would say, please give me your homework. And I had no pages to give her. And she said, Earl, I'm giving you a big goose egg today. Isn't that right, Court? And it didn't bother me then. I didn't pay any attention to what she had to say. But it was so important later in life to be able to say to myself, Earl, you're close to getting a 0 at this point. Chrissy, thank you for coming.
Yeah. Thanks, Earl.
Wait, one thing I want to say. Mom wouldn't have got me down here except for the war. And we did teach you because the men were going off to war.
Yeah, that's right. She came down here because they needed teachers. And then, here's the other piece of this story. The school district did not allow married women to teach public school time. And so my mom and dad knew each other. I think they were dating for maybe 10 years. And finally, Rufus Bucher this is the story that I've been told, and I hope it's accurate. Rufus Bucher, who was the school board chair, said, we have to find a substitute for Marie so that she and Lauren can get married. I mean, and here's something that boggles my mind. They couldn't think about, this is wartime and we don't have a lot of teachers. Couldn't they think about allowing her to continue to teach after she married? That apparently didn't occur to them. But by the time, by the time I was in first grade, I think she had started back teaching. So that changed over maybe a 10-year period of time where they couldn't conceive of allowing married women to teach to, well, sure, if you have the qualifications. So, but I guess we should be grateful that that was the case at the time, that they needed her at Mechanic Grove, because that's how she and my dad met when she came down here as a teacher. Clarence?
Yeah, I just wondered, did you, or your youth group, when you went here to church, do anything you enjoyed?
Oh,
That you can think of?
oh gosh, the youth group. I know that there was. I know youth group was really important to me. Nothing really sticks out and in my mind is, oh, wow, I remember that. I'd have to think about that. There's probably something tucked away there. But as I said, the youth group was also really important. That was my social, part of my social outlet, so. Yeah.
So, was there anybody you found as far as an older person who was very influential, other than the pastors?
Gosh. There were, once I start naming people, there were a lot of people in the church who were really important to me. Naomi Bucher, because it was Rufus's wife, was just a really very loving and a sweet woman, and I remember her. I remember Martha Bucher and Caleb Bucher. I remember Caleb Bucher, so this goes back to really young. He always had mints in his pocket. I could always smell these peppermints in his pocket, and I thought, yeah, that's how I knew Caleb was around. Yeah, Caleb and Martha, a lot of sort of the people a few years older than I who were coming back either from BVS or study abroad or college experiences. I listened. I was really shy. I mean, I have this image of me sort of, I would stand behind my mom, sort of like, I was very shy. So I think there were a lot of people had an impact on me, but I wasn't the kind of person who would sort of put myself out to go and talk to older folks, so, yeah. Yeah, Seal.
I was interested to see your notes. You had a paper. I sat in a lot of your mother's Bible studies, which were excellent. Her notes were always on the back with something that came in the mail, like one of those business,
Yeah.
not the small letters she sent.
Yeah.
The bigger ones, and she just had a list there on the back side, and that was it, and she just,
Yeah.
the picture you had there with her and my mother had her for math in high school as well as a basketball coach.
Yes.
And I had her in high school as a teacher.
Yeah.
It's kind of what goes around comes around.
Yeah. I had a.
I had her in 8th grade. I went to Central here at Mechanic Grove Mennonite Church, and it was a 3-room schoolhouse, and she was the teacher. She and Helen Wagner and Mrs. Horn, and I do love that.
Yes, and she substitute taught before I was in 1st grade, and she would take me with her, and I loved Central. I loved that building, and then I never got to go because they, consolidated. I never got to go there as a student, but I loved that building, and I loved going, and the students would, I was 4 or 5, and the students would take me out with them on recess, and there was an ice cream, I think, freezer in the basement, and I could get ice cream, and it was just really cool. So I have really strong memories of Central, even though I never went there as a student.
Okay, I think our time is up, but let's show our appreciation to Chris. And I thought I'd send us off. Let's stand and we're going to sing the chorus of This Is My Story. This is my song. Okay. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. All right, thanks for coming. Next week, we'll have Lori Ruth Bench, who I believe is, Seal, I'm sorry. Did I say the wrong one? Seal's next week. Oh, sorry. I'm jumping the gun.